Hi, and welcome back. Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point. Couple of quick sound bites, and we'll go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Geraldo Rivera now out talking about something that you've known about for months because you listen to this program. We talked about this from the very beginning, that we thought there was a good chance that Ambassador Chris Stevens was running guns to Syrian rebels out of that compound in Benghazi. And now Geraldo Rivera finally catching up to Focal Point. Geraldo Rivera said Friday, that's today, his sources tell him the U.S. was involved in a secret mission in Libya to arm the Syrian rebels, which was the reason for the initial secrecy about the attack in Benghazi. I believe, and my sources tell me, up those shoulder-fired surface-to-air missiles. They were going to hand them over to the Turks. The Turks were going to give them to the rebels in Syria. It was like Iran-Contra. I think it merits gigantic investigation. So this is fast and furious on steroids. Even Geraldo Rivera, hardcore leftist, he's saying, look, we need to do an investigation into this because this is fast and furious times 1,000. MSNBC, they're talking about the Benghazi cover-up, and they're using the word impeachment in connection with Clinton and in connection with Obama, that this whole thing looks Clintonian. Remember, Bill Clinton got impeached. So MSNBC, they are bailing on Obama, bailing on the White House, bailing on Hillary Clinton, afraid that more stuff was going to come out. So they say, look, this whole thing looks terrible, and they are using the word impeachment. BBC apologizing for their coverage after Benghazi revelations, heads will roll, said the North American editor of the BBC, Mark Mardell. In the interest of full disclosure, I have to say I have not in the past been persuaded that allegations of a cover-up were a big deal. It seemed to me a partisan attack based on very little, but that all changed, he says. This is the first hard evidence, talking about what's come out this week, the first hard evidence that the State Department did ask for changes to the CIA's original assessment. There's little doubt in my mind that this will haunt, this is the BBC, that this will haunt Hillary Clinton if she decides to run for president unless she executes some pretty fancy footwork. State Department spokesperson Victoria Nuland is directly implicated. Fingerprints of senior White House aides Ben Rhodes and Jay Carney are there as well. So that's the BBC. Big trouble for Hillary Clinton. Now here is Chris Matthews. Now remember, when you listen to this, we talked about this, how callous and unfeeling and indifferent and hard-hearted the Democrats have been on this. The liberals have been on this. Hillary Clinton waving her arms in the air. What difference does it make? Well, ask the four families who lost a loved one. We got the Democrat Congressman Elijah Cummings. Death is a part of life. Can you imagine a Republican saying that about the teachers at Newtown? Hey, death is a part of life. Get over it. Get over yourselves. Accept it. Life has risks. And then there's that other Democratic congressman said, hey, Ambassador Stevens knew there were risks. Can you imagine again somebody, a Republican saying that about teachers in Newtown? Hey, let's stop weeping and moaning and crying about this. These teachers know that there are risks. They've heard about school shootings. They know that there are risks. Another Democrat saying, hey, no news today. Nothing to see here. Move along. And this is before MSNBC now coming out saying, hey, this is impeachable. BBC, we apologize. There is a cover-up here, and it looks bad for Hillary Clinton. Lisa Myers, NBC, talking about all the problems. Jonathan Karl, 12 different versions of these talking points. So the ones that demonstrated they didn't care all the way through this were the Democrats and the liberals. Here's Chris Matthews. Listen to his take.
Spin. I think the only thing that matters to the American people, was anyone derelict enough to let somebody die who was a good guy? And I think that's an issue with most people. Humans, that is. Mm-hmm. Maybe not Republicans. Anyway, Lisa Myers, thank you. I'm just kidding. Thank you.
So he said, just kidding. That's an issue. Whether someone was derelict enough to let someone die who was a good guy. Who was that? Well, it was whoever did not deploy those forces to Benghazi. That's Hillary. Or somebody under her control, or somebody working with her refused to give them the help. And Chris Matthews said, look, that's a big deal. That's an issue with most people who are humans, which that word, he says, may not apply to Republicans. They may not be human, but everybody else, that's going to be an issue. And here is, speaking of a human, here is Pat Smith, clip 6. She is the mother of Sean Smith, who died in this attack, and she's giving her response to Jake Tapper, CNN. Again, here's another media outlet now that is starting to raise serious questions about this administration. Let's listen.
What was the last conversation you found?
The day he died, he called me and told me, Mom, there's people out here taking pictures, and I'm worried. I'm really worried about it. And he said he reported it, and they didn't care. Our government does not care about us. They don't care about us at all. They just care about their own butts and covering their souls or whatever it is.
So she says, look, they're just trying to cover themselves. They're just trying to excuse themselves. They don't care about us. And when she's talking about the government, who she's talking about? She's talking about Hillary Clinton. She's talking about Barack Obama. They don't care about us. They don't care about people. All they were trying to do is cover their butts. You know, it's interesting using that B word. I wanted to make sure. I went to the director of operations for Talk Radio, and I said, look, this is Jim Stanley. I said, Jim, I got a clip in here that's got the B word in it. Is it okay if I keep that word in there? Because it's in a context where a woman is saying, look, what this administration is trying to do is cover their boop. And he said, yeah, that's what they were trying to do. That's exactly what they were trying to do. You can keep it in there. So that's what she's saying. Look, this was about them trying to protect themselves. It wasn't about getting help to my son and the other Americans that were involved. Well, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840. Let's go to Chris, Mobile, Alabama. Chris, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, thank you, Brian. Thanks for all you do. I appreciate y'all bringing to light, the Kermit Gosnell trial, because you're not going to hear it or see it anywhere else except for maybe Fox News. But, for 40 years we've had this, prenatal terrorism going on in America that's really, in my opinion, tearing the soul of our country apart. And now it's gone outside the womb with Kermit Gosnell. And I don't think anyone has discussed the fact that when our president, Barack Hussein Obama, was a senator, he voted against, born alive legislation to protect babies, not once or twice, but 3 times. And on most things, Brian, he voted present or didn't vote at all because obviously he was thinking he didn't want to have any record to run on. And it was successful. You have to give him credit. He's a crafty politician, but I appreciate you bringing this to light. The other point I'd like to make, and I'll hang up and let you discuss it, I believe that the health department, the executive branch of the state of Pennsylvania needs to be taken to task and held accountable for turning their heads to what has happened in that clinic for the last 30 years, and people should be charged. There should be indictments for murder. There should be heads rolled, and this needs to be, their feet need to be held to the fire, and this needs to be happening all over the country, Brian.
All right, Chris. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that call. And talking about the last point first, the last time that Gosnell's clinic had been inspected was 1993, something like that. It had been 17 years from the time going back 17 years from when his clinic was shut down in 2010. You go back 17 years, 1983, hadn't been inspected. It was a house of horrors and had not been inspected by health inspectors, even though they had a statutory obligation to do it. And this is the most disturbing thing. Those inspections stopped when a pro-choice Republican governor, Tom Ridge, took office. Under Bob Casey, the Democrat, who was pro-life, the abortion clinics in Philadelphia were inspected. When a pro-abortion Republican got elected, so don't tell me that these social issues don't matter in Republican politics. This guy was off the reservation on the Republican Party platform, which is the pro-life party. He didn't even belong. The Republican Party shouldn't have even helped him run, let alone win, because when he got into office, those inspections ceased. They stopped doing them under a Republican governor. And so you're exactly right. Grossly irresponsible. And speaking of Obama voting president, everything you said about the infanticide in Illinois, exactly right. But realize this is what Obama's doing in Libya. He's trying to vote president. This is exactly what he's doing. Remember, he had the 5 o'clock meeting. He says, you guys handle it. He took off. He went bowling. He watched Netflix. He went to sleep. He wanted to get his beauty rest for the big party at Las Vegas the next day. Whatever he did, he was AWOL. He was nowhere to be found. He wanted to get as far away from this thing as he possibly could. So where's all the heat? Well, it's landed on Hillary. That's exactly what he wants. He voted present on Libya. I got nothing to do with this. Hey, I handed that over to Hillary. I said, you guys handle it. You got a problem, go talk to them. So anyway, that's exactly what he's trying to do. Let's go to Dan in Steele, Missouri. Dan, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian. Thanks for taking the call.
Yes, sir.
I'm from California, and I'm just visiting the area. And appreciate all your points and positions on the abortion and the Benghazi issues. My point is on the abortion issue.
Yes.
I've been watching a lot of TV in a hotel here, and mostly Fox I've been watching. And then I turned it over to CNN to see if they had anything on the Benghazi thing. And they were talking about the Amanda Berry kidnapping deal.
Yeah.
And they were talking about, the possible murder charges against Ariel Castro. And they had a couple lawyers on there. And they were saying how they'll try to make out that the fetus is an actual person that was murdered. And they kept saying that point, like the fetus. All of them were saying that. And that it wasn't really a person, but the prosecution will, pretend it's a person to charge them with murder. So that was pretty disgusting to
Yeah, and we've talked about this before, Dan. I appreciate your call. Thank you. Thank you for that. But in the abortion issue, what the left has to do is they have to dehumanize the baby. They cannot, under any circumstances, admit that that's a baby. Now, they use the word fetus. Now, the word fetus, you look it up in the dictionary, it means an unborn baby. I mean, the word fetus means baby. But people don't know that, so they can get away by using the word fetus and make everybody think that it's an it. It's not a he, it's not a she, it's an it. And that's what the left has to do. They've got to depersonalize that little baby in the womb because they know in a Christian nation that our instinct, it's in our DNA to protect life. It's the first of our unalienable rights that are spelled out in the Declaration. First of our unalienable rights is the right to life. That's in our DNA, because the Spirit of Christ has had such an impact on the value system in America. Whether we honor it or whether we honor it in the breach, there's been this consensus since our beginning that life is sacred. And so they've got to depersonalize that baby and call it a fetus so they can soothe their own consciences when that unborn baby is killed. Focal Point AFR Talk. Stay with us. Be right back.